Hi guys, Cody here. I wanted to talk very candidly today about a subject that I get asked about very often. This is a subject of truth and spiritual teachers. Is it okay to follow your spiritual teacher? Am I being led astray? My spiritual teacher has taught me so many things, but I just saw that they did this and I don't approve of that. I want us to understand that it is not the person or the vessel that we're following. It is the truth that they represent that they're following, or the truth that they're teaching, the truth that they've accessed, that they've channeled, that they've acquired the knowledge of to share. There's not a single person on this earth, I believe, that is perfect, because to be human, the verb human implies imperfection. If I'm being human, that means that I'm doing something that gives me an excuse to make mistakes. That's an actual term, that's an actual definition of being human, is being imperfect. So to try to look for someone who has achieved this level of perfection and try to get them to help you or guide you along your path, you will always be disappointed, because there's nobody on this earth who's going to be that perfect. But you will find many people who represent the perspective of truth that you align with personally. So every spiritual teacher is a perspective of source, and there are so many different perspectives of source. That's why there's so many different ways to achieve enlightenment. You don't need to meditate, you don't need crystals, you don't necessarily need those things, I should say. There are many different ways that we can become a fully rounded, integrated human, and awaken fully. There's many different ways that we can do that, and there's even within the New Age community, there are so many different perspectives of source of truth from so many different spiritual teachers. How many spiritual teachers can you find in the New Age community? There's so many. So if you're looking for one that's perfect, you will never find them, because they don't exist. So I get asked a lot about this, or I just see this a lot. I see people get really frustrated when they're following a spiritual teacher, and then they find evidence for them not maybe following their teachings, or they might not be perfect. And I don't approve of the way that they handle this situation, or they act in their personal life. I don't approve of the actions that they may take, whatever they may do. Something about their personhood that you don't approve of does not mean that they are not a valid teacher for you. So I want that to sink in for a second, because just think about that. What really defines your truth? Is it the person that you're following, or is it the truth behind them that you're following? I see evidence for this a lot in spiritual communities where people, and I'm going to use Teal Swan for an example, because she is a controversial figure, and she's a spiritual teacher, and she's also a close friend of mine, and she gets a lot of flack for this, because she's not a perfect person. Guess what? I'm not a perfect person either. I make mistakes, so does she. But that doesn't mean that the information is invalid. That's really important to grasp, because your indication of whether the information is valid or not is by asking yourself, are you better off before being exposed to this truth, for example? Ask yourself that. If you're second guessing this teacher or this person, you have to say, okay, what have I learned from this teacher? Am I better off now than I was before being exposed to this teacher? Is this teacher still serving me now? Is this truth still serving me now? Use truth and the teacher interchangeably. Is this truth still serving me now? If the answer is yes, then you're still aligned with your truth. But the other element of this is that your truth can evolve depending on the circumstances of your life at the time. So what was true for you 5 years ago may not be true for you right now. That means that your truth can change. That means your spiritual teachers can change. They evolve, they change depending on where you are currently in your life. And your teachers will reflect wherever you are in your life. And your teachers don't have to come in the form of someone who identifies as a guru or a spiritual teacher. They could come in the form of mentors, or just people who you look up to, who give you advice, who led your path already, that you can see have done that already, and then you can try to emulate that along the way. You always want to ask is my truth still serving me now? That's super, super important, because that's all, I mean, it's always, always important to ask questions. I always say this, asking questions is probably the most important thing that you can do as a spiritual being, is always ask questions. Never be afraid to ask questions, and just be aware that your truth can evolve. They will change over time. You will encounter new teachers who will reflect where you are now as opposed to where you were before. And also, if your truth does evolve, that does not invalidate what was your truth. So let's use teal as an example. Teal helps you heal immensely. It helps you get to this place, and now it doesn't seem like you so much identify with everything that teal is saying, but you're identifying with what this other teacher is saying. It's almost like you feel like you're betraying your old teacher or your old truth, or you're to say, everything that I did in the past was wrong or invalid, and that wasn't right, that I was doing it wrong all along, that now I found it. It's like, no, it was right then, and it's right now too. It can change, and it can evolve, and I want us to understand that, because I see this disrupt relationships that people develop within these spiritual communities, because when you are seeking truth and you find a teacher that is aligned with your truth, you're going to be vibrationally attracting people who resonate at that same frequency, and you will attract people who will reflect your just your state of mind and the way of thinking that you possess. You will attract those people, and then once you feel like you're evolving from that, it's like sometimes those people will start slipping away, or you feel like they're bad. That's ego. So when ego becomes super identified with a teacher or a truth, it tends to pin the conflicting truths against each other. I just want us to kind of step back from that for a minute, to realize that it's not the teacher, it's the truth behind that, and your truth can evolve. And if your truth evolves, that's the thing about spirituality, is there's so many truths that contradict one another, but they're both equally true, depending on where you are or who you are, what your circumstances of your life is. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit today, just so that we can clarify what truth is, and just to remind you guys that you're not off your path, even when you think that, oh my gosh, like, I'm encountering this new teacher who completely contradicts everything that Teal was saying, or whoever was saying, Matt Kahn, or whoever your spiritual teacher is. Something that this teacher is saying something that is, contradicting what Cody was saying, that I used to really, really identify with a couple of years ago, but now it just doesn't feel so good anymore. I don't feel that need to use that so much anymore, because that truth doesn't so much serve me currently at this point in my life anymore. That's okay, because that doesn't invalidate that truth. That truth is still ringing true for other people. But in order to evolve and expand and awaken as a human, you have to be able to evolve and find new people or teachers that represent where you are now. And that's how we grow. So I just want to talk about that briefly for you guys. I hope that you can resonate with this in some way, shape, or form. I love all of you guys. I love Teal Swan too. I'm just saying that just so that we all are aware. I'm not bashing anyone or any specific teachers. This is not a message directed at anyone in particular at all. It's something in general that I want us to understand, because truth is something that I'm really, really, really passionate about. And I think it's part of my duty and mission to get people to understand this concept of truth. I hope that you guys identify with this, and I hope that this truth serves you, and if it doesn't, that's okay too. Peace and love to all of you. Have a good night.